Hey guys, Krootman here with another GPU review in 2024. I continue to look for the best 1440p graphics card in 2024, and I'll admit that this GPU that we're going to talk about was not on my radar. But boy, I'm glad I pivoted to it. And as you can see, we've reviewed quite a few GPUs so far this year, and we have quite a few left to go. So stay tuned for this video after a word from our sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by me, my channel, Krootman Tech and Mining. So please hit that like button and feel free to subscribe. The proceeds from it go to benefiting the channel and enable me to film the great content that I'm filming. We do everything from GPUs to install guides for PCs to crypto mining videos. The goal of my channel is to bridge the divide between gamers and crypto miners, because every gamer is a crypto miner when they find out their PC can make them a little bit of passive income. And every crypto miner is usually a gamer. So feel free to hit that sub button. Feel free to join as a member of the channel as well. But if not, just hit that like button and that sub button if this video helped you out. And it will go a long way towards helping my channel. The march to 5,000 subscribers continues. Thank you guys again for watching this video. And let's get back to it. So as I said before, this GPU was not originally on my radar. But with GPU mining profitability going down in the gutters, and the price of the 2080 Ti dropping on the used market, I figured I got one right here. As you can see, it is the EVGA, RIP EVGA, we miss you so much, 2080 Ti hybrid model. It's a for the win edition as well, so it's one of the top end EVGA models. And I figured, why not review it? And wow, was I floored with the results. Okay, so what are you getting yourself into if you choose to buy an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2080 Ti in 2024? Well, let's talk about the big thing, the most important thing, and that is the 11 gigabits of VRAM. At 11 gigabits of VRAM, that puts that at higher than the 3080 base model, at 10 gigabits of VRAM. Then it puts it at way higher than the 8 gigabit of VRAM of the 3070. Puts it on par with the 6700 XT, which is a GPU that the 2080 Ti is much better than. You know, typically AMD GPUs have a lot more VRAM, but they are a lot worse in ray tracing. And you do get first generation ray tracing cores, and then you get GDDR6 memory, which is better than 6X as it doesn't run hot, and you get a 352 memory bit bus. Basically what these specs are telling you is this GPU will age very gracefully as we hit the twilight years of its life, as this thing is almost 3 generations old. But for what we're talking about, which is 1440p gameplay, I think if you were to buy one of these right now, you would be very, very happy with the results, and I think it will age very well. And without further ado, let's get into the testing and how I go over my testing methodology. And without further ado, let's get into the testing. Alright, so as always, here's a quick disclaimer on my review methods, because I do things a little bit differently than other reviewers. The first thing is I don't use upscaling. I believe in native performance, especially at 1440p. And if you're going to spend even $200 to $250 on a graphics card, you would like to try to play it in native resolution whenever possible. There are plenty of benchmarks out there that show upscaling on them, so feel free to check those out if you want to see them. I also don't show an FPS graph like you see in other reviews. What I essentially will do is I will show you a mix of the in-game benchmark and a screen still of the footage so you can see what it actually looks like, and then I will talk about my experience with it, as I believe that if you're watching my review, you would like to know my experience with the GPU. I start all of my 1440p testing with the same exact settings and I adjust accordingly. Basically, I run them all on ultra or max settings, and I will specify if I have to adjust any at all. And finally, I just want to give you, I want to show you my test bench. Essentially, all you need to know about the test bench is it's running an X570 motherboard with a 5800X3D that I repaired actually, along with 32 gigabits of 3200 DDR4 RAM. So with all of the disclaimers out of the way, let's take a look at the results, which is what you've all been waiting for. Alright, so let's start out with my esports title, which I use COD for that, the latest COD, Modern Warfare 3. You can see my display right up here is the Gigabit M27Q. It's one of my favorite panels. It's got 165 Hertz refresh rate. And you can see that we played it with upscaling off, and you can see all the settings we used. So this is unoverclocked. Now I do play around with overclocking and unoverclocking, especially with older GPUs, as you want to get the most amount of performance you can get. You can see we averaged 75 FPS. In-game footage, non-overclocked, we were more at about 85 to 90-ish FPS. And when we overclocked it, we were able to crack the 100 FPS barrier. If you do want to get more FPS, you can obviously lower the settings, as we were basically running on ultra settings most of the time, essentially basically max settings. So if you lower those down to, say, high settings or even medium, I would not recommend medium. I prefer high at the very lowest. You will definitely crack probably like 100 to 110 FPS. I think I played about 7 or 8 rounds on hardcore, which reflexes matter, and I only had problems on 1 or 2 rounds when I was overclocking the 2080 Ti. COD didn't really like it when it was overclocked, but I only lost about a 10% performance. And you can also see the estimated VRAM usage is falling well short of the target for max settings. So that is good, as we were able to showcase how important 11 gigabits of VRAM on the 2080 Ti are. So overall, I would say this was absolutely a win in COD, because even the 1% lows and the 5% lows were not that bad at 62 FPS and 58 FPS accordingly. Let's move on to a single player title, Horizon Forbidden West. So ignore the 1% lows on here, because I have not been able to get the 1% lows working right. I just wanted this up there so you could see the CPU usage, and you could see where the core clock was, so you could see whether or not this was overclocked or not. Now this one was not overclocked. I found that overclocking it didn't really do too much on Forbidden West. I got like a 5 to 6% improvement, so I just ran stock. And you can see here, we're hitting about 70-ish FPS, 70 to 75 FPS, well above the 60 FPS that I would need on a game like this. And you can see I wanted to pick this screen grab because you could see the flora, the fauna, and you could just see how beautiful it looks. And I like to pick images like this where you can showcase the difference between native and upscaling. And if it was upscaled, it would be a little more blurry. And this is why I love native resolution and much prefer it. And I had no issues playing this game. I ran it around I like to benchmark it in the beginning area, as there's a lot of shadows, there's a lot of fauna, and there's some enemies so that you can fight. And I found no issues. This game works perfectly. And the settings are maxed out. No issues. Anything above 60 FPS on a game like this is a win in my book. So, and beyond playable. So now let's move on to Helldivers 2. So one thing I want to say about Helldivers 2 is we all know that Helldivers 2 is CPU limited on a lot of games. I did pair this with basically the best 1440p CPU in my book in terms of the 5800 X3D. And you can see we had about 60 FPS. Now, FPS can be a little misleading in Helldivers. This was, as you can see here, not overclocked either. But I think FPS is a little misleading. And I normally don't like to compare this to other GPUs while testing, but I do want to give you an idea. The 4K, the 4090 will native resolution will only get you about 90 to 95 FPS. And you know, you're looking at 1440p with higher end GPUs like the 4070 Super, which costs about double the price. So at about 60 to 65 FPS, this bodes very, very well for the 2080 Ti. I had no issues playing it. Now there's some issues in the gameplay, but that's a totally different story. But I didn't have any issues, and you can see there's a lot of stuff on the screen, and we had a full roster of people. Let me show you another screenshot to prove my point on that. Here you can see there's an explosion. There's a lot of other people on the screen as well, and this was not overclocked either. So a lot going on, and you usually get better performance when you don't have things going on and you have less people on the screen. And this was also difficulty level 8 to give you an idea of how many enemies were on screen. Now let's move on to some ray trace games, and I think you're going to really, really find that things get spicy from here on out. Okay, now I'm going to spend a little more time on the next two games because I really want to drive this point home. I'm going to be honest with you. The 2080 Ti has first generation ray tracing cores. I didn't have a lot of expectations or a lot of hope for this game, but wow. Now this is unoverclocked, okay? We are getting 30 FPS with ray tracing, all ray tracing settings on besides path tracing, because there's no way the 2080 Ti can handle path tracing. Ray tracing lighting on medium. And look at all the other settings. Basically everything else was at high. It says custom on the preset because I had everything at high. And I had no upscaling on, as you can see here. Oh my goodness. Look at this. The minimum FPS was 26, which was okay. The maximum FPS was about 35. Guys, we cracked the 30 FPS limit on Cyberpunk with ray tracing at medium. Not low, at medium. And everything else was on high, with crowd density on high as well, because I believe that is important to have an immersive experience in Night City. I am blown away, guys. But then I thought, why not overclock it, and let's see if we can get it stable. Guys, here are the overclocking numbers. Look at that. You've got a max FPS of almost 40 FPS and a minimum FPS of almost 30. This is more than playable at these settings, guys. I mean, I played with the 4090. I put 70 hours on Cyberpunk at 4K with basically these same settings, but with ray tracing and everything else maxed. And I was only getting about 40 to 45 FPS. I spent, and to prove my point on this, that this is playable, I spent about an hour playing on these settings, and I got no crashes, so it was pretty stable with the overclocks dialed in. And I want to use these screen grabs to give you an idea. I went to the downtown by Arasaka, so you could see all of the shadows and everything in the background. And not only did this game look beautiful, but it played great too. You can see right here I'm about 35 FPS, and another screen grab right here where you can see more of the holograms. Guys, I had no stutters, I had no issues, everything was great. I could beat Cyberpunk at this, and this was incredible because we're talking first generation ray tracing cores here. So I thought, all right, if it can run Cyberpunk, right, where we had the 6900 XT and the 7900 GRE start to stumble as we got into heavy ray tracing workloads, let's turn it up a notch and let's go to Alan Wake 2, because usually that's the game that mauls everything, and it's killed every GPU I've tested so far, and especially on the AMD GPUs, I've basically had to turn ray tracing off. So how do these first gen RT cores stack up? All right, so first I'm going to show just the full screen. I'm going to take my big beautiful head out of the picture. This was at the ray tracing medium presets. Now they do turn path tracing on, and this was with DLAA on, which is basically no upscaling and everything else at high. It's not really playable. We reach under that 30 FPS mark, and you start to get around like 15 to 20 FPS. It's not good. So let's turn path tracing off, because frankly, no GPU that is out right now can really handle path tracing. You can kind of run the 4090 at 1440p path tracing, but that's basically it. So let's turn off path tracing and see what the results show. Oh wow, guys, we did it. We cracked the 30 FPS mark. And not only did we crack it, we blew by it. You rotate between like 37 to 32 FPS. Now this is ray tracing at medium. All I did was take path tracing off. Look at how beautiful this is, guys. I wish I could properly convey how beautiful this looks, but you know, YouTube does not let you record in 1440p. We're just using a screen grab, unfortunately. But wow, guys, wow. I want you to see my facial reaction. I was blown away by this. I played Alan Wake for maybe 20 minutes. Now, the overclocks were a little rough. You can't really minimize it, because if you try to minimize it to grab a screen grab, it crashed. I'm blown away. First generation RT cores can do this. Honestly, one of two things, right? I either slightly botched my AMD testing on Alan Wake, or NVIDIA RT cores are that much better. But guys, if you thought that you couldn't play Alan Wake 2, which is the most technically demanding game out, in my humble non-expert opinion, on a 2080 Ti, you were wrong. This is the pinnacle of testing, in my opinion, and basically what this shows is, A, if you have a 2080 Ti, you don't need to upgrade. I hope you haven't upgraded. And B, if you're looking for a GPU on a budget, I don't think you're going to beat this one, guys. I'm absolutely blown away. So while the benchmarks looked fantastic, the FPS was great, and this is a fantastic gaming GPU, one of the reasons I said avoid it before was because the price was too high, because it was pretty popular for crypto mining. Well, with crypto mining, as far as on the GPU side, borderline collapsing right now, I do think it will get better, but that's for another video and another debate. The prices of the 2080 Ti's are going down to the point where I could recommend buying them. We've got right here, like real models that don't have any issues. We had one that sold for $229 right there. If you look, you can get some lower end models at $250. You can get, wow, this is the one I have for $165. You can get some of the blower cards pretty cheap as well. I'm sure you can honestly, if you really look on like maybe OfferUp or Facebook Marketplace, you won't have any problems getting this thing for $250 or less. And that is incredible. Now, I would avoid buying the Founders as they're beautiful and they tend to hold their value. But like right here, you could see a blower for $230. So in conclusion, I would argue that the value proposition on the 2080 Ti is essentially unmatchable right now. At 11 gigabits of VRAM, you're going to be future-proofed, because if you can play Cyberpunk 2077 and Alan Wake 2, you better believe you're going to be able to play any game on 1440p and hit around the same FPS you're hitting now, as in for high-end single-player games with DLSS off and ray tracing on medium, you're going to hit about the playable 30 FPS mark. And in multiplayer games, you can look to hit around 100 FPS. Now, obviously, if you lower settings, you will increase your FPS. And if you really want to, you can turn on DLSS and get even more FPS, which, as I said, basically makes this the value king. You have to move up almost $150 to the 6900 XT at around $400. Frankly, it could be even more than that to hit the kind of value proposition you are looking at in the 2080 Ti. And for that $150 plus you're looking at, you could get a CPU and a motherboard and maybe even a cooler with that if you're looking at around the 5600 range of performance. So that's almost half of your computer for the price savings, and your ray tracing performance is going to basically match or beat the 6900 XT. You're going to have, maybe like a 15 to 20% less performance in non-ray tracing games, but honestly, you don't even notice it. I've gamed with a lot of GPUs, and the time I spent on the 2080 Ti has me shocked. This thing isn't even close. I don't know where you're going to find this kind of value at $200 to $250. I don't think you will. This thing is better than the 3070, it's better than the 3060 Ti, it's better than the 6700 XT, it's better than anything Intel can pop out, and it's certainly leagues better than anything you will find on the new, on the new end of the spectrum. You will always find better value used than new, and this just proves it. The 2080 Ti is the, I don't even know what to call it. It's beyond a Kroot buy. It's a Kroot must have. And frankly, if you want an even better deal, look for mine GPUs, as they are usually being sold in bulk and you can usually get a better deal on them. And I'll show a video down below that mining does not influence the performance of a gaming GPU. Doesn't hurt it in any way, shape, or form, other than maybe a damaged fan or two, which frankly you should be looking to buy damaged fan GPUs, as you can get them for steals, and that doesn't affect their performance either. So thank you again for watching this review. Again, the 2080 Ti is a Kroot buy. It is going to age well. You have such a unique combination in an NVIDIA GPU. You've got more VRAM than most GPUs in this price range, in this performance range, because it's the Halo N card for this generation. You've got a good memory bus. You've got GDDR6 memory, and you've got ray tracing cores. The best ray tracing cores, the first generation ray tracing cores, but they still are aging very well. And the VRAM will continue to allow this thing to age well. There's nothing that I would buy in this price range again. So the 2080 Ti is a must buy if you're looking for budget GPUs. So thank you again for watching. Please like and subscribe for more CPU, GPU, ASIC content, and as we continue to find the best GPU for 1440p. Spoiler alert, I think this might be the best value. So thanks again for watching. Please like and subscribe. Krootman is out.